Hello everybody and welcome from me, Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson to our regular monthly Motor Trade Radio chat about the latest used car value trends with Derren Martin, Director of Valuations at CAP HPI. So welcome back Derren and congratulations on the new title and promotion there.
Thanks Phil, yeah, good to be back on.
Yeah, great to have you back on, Derren, and congratulations from me as well. Now, for the sake of listeners, just to recap, we had 8 months of consecutive price rises from March all the way through to October last year, followed by a dip of 1.2% in November and then 1.4% in December, with prices closing the year at a record-breaking high of 22%. So can you bring us up to date with the headline figure for January and also set the scene in terms of what dealers were telling you about January stock levels and demand?
Thanks. We saw some drops in November and December, and we put that down at the time to seasonality. It happens every year, but after such an unusual year and stock shortages, I think there was maybe a little bit of a question about whether it would happen again, but it obviously did. We then, as we've gone into January, I would say it's been probably a quieter than normal start to the year for, especially over that Christmas period between Christmas and New Year, and then that short first week back. And I think there's a little bit of concern amongst retailers that it wasn't going to be an uplifting January. But since then, we've seen the situation improve, not dramatically improve, but steadily improve. Retail demand seems pretty good. Has been getting better, as I say, through the month. And in the early days of the month, we saw values dropping, but we've started to see them recovering to a degree now. But I would say it's very, very mixed out there, really. So the average movement of live values during January at 3 years, at a 3 year point, has actually been a zero movement. So that's the average. But if you look at all of the moving parts within that, there's been models that have gone down in value, examples being sort of the Audi Q5, BMW X1, Jaguar E and F-Pace, Grandland X, Qashqai, and then you've got models that have gone up in value, Touareg, T-Cross, Mocha, Crossland X, vehicles like that. So it's been really interesting to see all the moving parts within, and there's also been differences by age as well, with older cars going up in value, at almost 3% at 10 years, but at younger ages a very, very slight movement down. So the zero at 3 years doesn't really paint the whole picture.
And as you say, so it's 0% over the course of January, and I was interested in what you were saying there about going into January. It was a slow start. We had that short week. What was the reaction from dealers in terms of the pricing as they went into January? Did they hold firm? Was there any fluctuations?
Again, it was a bit mixed, and there were sales that we weren't used to seeing over the last few months. So there were a few sales springing up. I think some retailers were probably a little bit concerned that they'd stocked up at high prices in sort of September, October time, and when demand didn't come quickly, then there was probably some adjustment of prices. Margins are still very high, which is obviously good for the dealers, but there has been some adjusting of prices down. Some cars just look quite expensive, and obviously the ones that have just been a bit sticky and have probably been in stock for longer than hoped for. So it's not been across the board, these price realignments, and some dealers have really held their nerve, but there has been some that have reduced prices of some, but it's been more selective than across the board. And we've seen sales, as I say, with some doing sort of sticker prices reduced, some doing an over and allowance on a part exchange, some doing sort of after sales like service packages. So there's been quite a few ways of stimulating demand.
And Derren, I mean, you've mentioned there in terms of some of the differences around, the age segments and vehicle types in terms of performance over the month. And, I think you're right. I think, like you say, that level 3 year 60 at zero movement, there's a lot going on behind the that sort of average of a lot of averages, isn't there? As we always try and point out, that the devil's in the detail. And I suppose the first thing is, it's still a good time to be buying or selling a Zafira, as everybody keeps referring to Zafira as the key car.
I was looking at the data actually on Zafira and Zafira. So looking at the last 12 months. So the last 12 months obviously now starts in February, March time of last year. They were actually dropping before that. Ever since then, they've gone up pretty much every month. Zafiras. They're now about 75% up over that 12-month period, because we've knocked off the months where they were dropping previously. Now, when you're looking at 12 months, they're actually the second highest in percentage terms. I think it's the Toyota Auris hybrid that has gone up by the most.
And in terms of segments, I mean, the question that is asked a lot more recently now, and I'm asked it, and I'm sure you have, but what's happening in terms of the fuel type marketplace? Because we're starting to see the entrance of electric vehicles as more come in as we move through the year. What's happening in the marketplace in terms of demand for electric vehicles and the valuations of alternative fuels compared to combustion engine? Because we know that combustion engines are going to be shorter in terms of supply as we move through time, and EVs will start to increase.
Yeah, it's a bit mixed on the valuations on EVs as well. Volume wise, although it's in the public eye a lot and in the press a lot, it's still such a minuscule amount of the used car data that we see. Really small numbers still, or small percentage overall. Petrol still leads the way, followed by diesel, and then you've got the alternative fuels. They're obviously growing and growing quickly, but still a very small proportion of the data. But electric vehicles this month, on average, have gone up by 0.6% at 3 years old, 1.3% at 1 year old. So overall, that's the strongest fuel type performance, and that's on those 1 year olds. That's about £500. So they have performed quite well. But as I say, it's been a little bit mixed, and some models gone up. MG ZS gone up, Honda E's gone up, Q4 e-tron, Polestar 2. But then you've got some drops on Tesla Model 3 has gone down, older Leaf has gone down, and Peugeot 2008 has gone down. So it is quite mixed, but I would say demand is still there, and a lot of the talk is about EVs, and that is only going to increase. So I would expect it to be quite a strong year for electric vehicle sales.
And Derren, just following on from that, any observations in terms of how the age segments performed? I think in the editorial you pointed to older cars performing particularly well over the course of the month.
Yeah, older cars gone up by about 3%, just under, which is about £100 overall. And there's a real price point. A lot of the dealers that we speak to are talking about lower price point cars performing well. It's certainly been mentioned a number of times about that sort of £7,000 to £12,000 sweet spot. It's obviously hard to get cars within that now, and they're in demand. Once you start getting up to sort of £15,000, £20,000, there's a little bit more reluctance by the consumers, I think, to buy. And I guess you have to take into account there that the £20,000 car is now older with more mileage than it ever was before. So if you're used to paying an amount, or you've got an amount in your head that's what you pay for a used car when you replace your current one, you're going to get a bit of a shock when you go in and the car that you can afford for that price is older with more mileage. But also your car would have gone up in value, so that will counterbalance some of that. But I still think that's a bit of an eye opener, and I think it is those cheaper price point cars that are performing better, and obviously some of those are the older vehicles, so that's why they've gone up, got a little bit more room to move up, and the younger ones, despite there being a shortage of 1 year old cars, a lot of those cars are above new car list, so they haven't got the room to go up quite so much.
And interesting what you're saying about that price band 15 to 20k, because I mean, we in the industry know that prices have been rising, but if you're a used car buyer, you haven't bought a car for 3 or 4 years, you go in to buy one, you will be surprised, won't you? Because you'll have a fixed budget, probably based on what you paid last time. And as you said before, you're looking at older cars for that sort of price band.
I think it's more recognisable now by the consumer that the prices have gone up. I think they're aware of it. I mean, it was on there was an ITV programme a couple of weeks ago on the ITV Tonight show about it. I think valuations of your own car went up quite dramatically during that period, during the show, with everyone watching it and realising that their car might have gone up in value. And they probably had quite a nice surprise when they did value it. It is more in the public eye, but yeah, you're probably still going to be a little bit shocked when you go in to buy one and you can't afford it, or you can afford it, but it's older, an older or a different type of car.
And turning this on to the dealers, I mean, what feedback are you getting? Because obviously we know that the average value has gone up, so you know that if you had a dealer that was having a stock profile of £14,000 on average, they've got, for the same age and mileage profile, suddenly those cars are at £17,000 for argument's sake. That starts to have an impact on funding. And,
yeah, definitely.
Are you hearing a little bit of that from the market at the minute? Because we've had a fairly slow start to the year, haven't we? It started to pick up in recent weeks and days, but I think, is it partly that there is a lot of stock on forecourts at the minute that they're just working their way through?
Yeah, it depends on the dealer, I think. I think you've certainly got those that stocks up and have got a lot of cars on their forecourt. And yeah, obviously less cars to fill their funding lines now with those prices going up. So yeah, there's definitely some of that. I think you said that it's been improving sort of the last few weeks and days, but it has. I would say it's probably the general theme is the month has probably been about 80% of where they wanted it to be, or of a sort of a normal January. So it's not on fire, but it's going pretty well and improving. But yeah, there's definitely some issues with funding there. I think replenishing stock wise, I think it's probably a good time to buy if you're sort of a smaller independent, because the big guys aren't necessarily out there buying in bulk at the moment because it's been a little bit slower than they would have liked, and they have stocked up previously, so they have no requirement to go out and buy in big numbers, and they're kind of just picking off where they need to. So it's probably a good time to buy. We think prices will probably stay quite strong in the trade market for some time. There has been some adjustment, as I say, of some retail values, and that may be required going forward just to stimulate the sale of stock, because margins are quite high and prices are quite high. But I don't think that needs to be across the board. It needs to be pretty selective.
And finally, Derren, we always ask you what the crystal ball is saying, especially over the next couple of over the coming weeks, and really following on from how you describe January, where you say retail activity over the course of the month was best described as steady and slowly improving. Do you see that going into February and beyond?
Yeah, I think so. There are a few sort of bumps in the road, I guess, with the cost of living going up. That's obviously people are getting fuel bills, which have gone up. Cost of your shopping's going up, so might be sort of some concern there. We sort of said in December that people would probably be going out and looking at a car rather than booking a holiday. I think you can book a holiday with a bit more confidence than maybe you could a couple of months ago. So that they could have some impact. But we do think it's going to be strong. You still can't get a new car in a hurry. Lead times are 6 months plus still on a lot of new cars. So if you want a car, you'll probably be looking at a used one. So I think, the next couple of months at least, we think it's going to be pretty stable. Again, it'll be very mixed, and you need to look at live values. We do get people still sort of quoting monthly values at us, and we have to stress that if you thought that car is wrongly priced monthly, well, look at the live value, and it's probably right now. So there will be cars that go up, there will be cars that go down, and it's worth keeping a really close eye on those sorts of things. As I say, I mentioned some of the cars that are quite similar to each other, and they've moved in different directions depending on if their dealer network are out there buying, what sort of the stock levels of those sorts of cars are out there. So SUVs have been under a little bit more pressure because there's plenty of them out there, whereas other cars sort of haven't dropped by quite as much or have even gone up. So it's very, very mixed out there. We certainly don't think there's any sort of big crash coming. There has been some press, more from the States really, about values dropping by as much as they went up by. We certainly don't see that, and I don't see that there's going to be much pressure on price for at least 2 or 3 months, and maybe longer than that.
No, I couldn't agree more there, Derren. I think the air of caution is there as always at the minute, but I think you're right. I think there's no tsunami of products on the horizon. I think we've got a fairly stable marketplace, and as we've spoke about previously, the trajectory of growth couldn't continue at the rate that it was doing. It had to stabilise at some point, but again, it's still a fairly stable market, all things considered, from where we were last year at this same point, and even the year before. So I think you're right. I think there's a lot going on, but
I think it's good that if values are as steady as they seem to be, obviously it's mixed within that, and there are some going up and some going down, but I think a fairly level book, as we still call it, is quite reassuring, and it means you can buy with confidence, and that there isn't a big crash coming, and also that prices aren't going to keep doing what they did last year, because as you say, that was never going to be sustainable. But a little bit of stability in the market will definitely be a good thing.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, just remains to say, Derren, and obviously conscious of time for you, that appreciate you coming on again and joining us today and providing us with insight into January's valuations, but obviously more importantly in terms of setting the scene and that reliability and word of support for what's coming ahead in February. So just a reminder for listeners, I mean, as always, Derren's there in the social media space, definitely on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to Derren, and he'll gladly support you. And obviously there's the webinars that are consistently promoted as well. But if you do want to look at the editorials, then those are available. So you can go onto the CAP HPI website and you go over to cap-hpi.com, and you'll find all the editorials there. And as I say, Derren will always be there to support you. So again, Derren, thanks for coming on, and can't believe it's a month since we last spoke, but I'm sure we'll be saying that again in January. So
Around quickly.
It does. It comes around far too quickly already. But thanks for joining us again today, as always, Derren. It's been really insightful as always.
Yeah, no, pleasure. I'll speak to you next month.